Hey everyone, welcome back to Grid Chat. I am your host, Marissa Tandon, and we've had a very full week of racing this weekend. So we are going to be diving into the F1 race recap, which included a sprint race and an actual race. And I am very excited because I won't be doing this alone. I have a very special guest that I'm very excited to have on. So please welcome Tasia to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello. I am so honestly one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is having an excuse to hang out with all of the girly pops that I've met online. It's so nice. So this is great. I'm glad you're able to hang out.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, just so that everyone can get to know you, I have a few get to know you questions. So how did you get into Formula One in the first place?
Love that question. I got into Formula One in 2020. I was dating this guy at the time who actually was a huge Drive to Survive fan. So that's I love telling people that because people always like to say that it's only women that are Drive to Survive fans. And I'm like, no, this bro, he was literally like a bodybuilder, like that kind of guy, super into DTS and loved Lewis Hamilton. And I was like, wait, I think I love Lewis Hamilton too. And that's kind of how I got into Formula One, during the pandemic. And that relationship ended and I wasn't super into it. And then I was like, let me see what the fuss was about. Like, why was he so obsessed with this thing? And I did my own research, started watching races. I actually really didn't watch DTS after that. I was just watching races, but then I felt really confused. So I was like, let me go back to Drive to Survive. And then I was hooked. And here we are now.
I love that because I feel like you're right. So many people say that it's only women that watch Drive to Survive.
Right.
But I know a number of men who got into it through Drive to Survive. James Coker, who was on the podcast originally, he also got into it because of Drive to Survive. And now he has a huge platform about it. So it's it is just really good storytelling. And like you said, it teaches you the basics so that you can get into it and then you can watch the races. And I don't know that people are watching Drive to Survive and then not going on to watch the sport, or they're watching a season and being like, I don't like it. And then they don't watch the races at all, or the next season of Drive to Survive. I don't know anyone who's watching it as though they watch the Kardashians or something like that.
No, Drive to Survive does what it's supposed to do.
So this week, we are back in China for the first time since 2019, which I think was a big factor in what we saw this weekend. Most of the fact being that we have some drivers that have never seen this track before, and every driver had only seen the track 5 years ago. There was supposed to be a GP there in 2020, which was canceled because of COVID, and now we're back. So when we were here in 2019, Lewis Hamilton won the race. Pierre Gasly and Max Verstappen were teammates, and Lando Norris was just a promising rookie. I was reading the article, the way F1 does those pre-race articles, and that was what they called Lando Norris in the article, and I thought it was so funny going into this race. So that's a little time machine for you. Also, speaking about track history, this is the very first time a Chinese driver drove at the Chinese Grand Prix, which was Zhou Guanyu, which was a very emotional weekend, I thought. I loved what they did for Zhou, and it really felt he deserved it. 100%. I loved his little special spot. I loved that also, it wasn't the best weekend for Zhou, but he definitely had a couple of really good moments. So I felt like that was, really good for him. And it's history. It's the first Chinese driver in Formula One history at the Chinese Grand Prix. Big deal. I agree. And I think I really loved it because I thought it was nice to get to see a race circuit have hometown pride that hasn't gotten to do so before, and to have this moment where they have a driver that is there for them and that it's exciting for them to be able to cheer this person on. And also I think there are moments where it's possible that Zhou won't be racing next year. He's one of the seats that are up that it may or may not kind of go forward. And I think it was nice for him to be able to have that moment and for China to be able to have that moment. But also I think with Zhou, one of the things I really like about him is that he also has a little bit of that Lewis flair where he is into fashion. He is trying to make a statement. And I love, it's so rare, right? But I love moments where men in sports allow themselves to be visibly emotional, and watching him cry on the track in front of everyone was just so beautiful to me, and something that a lot of times we don't get to see. They hold that back, and we're so used to seeing anger or passion, but this is beautiful raw emotion, and I loved it.
And I love there was that moment when after the race, he was talking to a reporter. I don't know who it was, but Joe was kind of saying like, "Oh, I had to cover my face," and he was like, "It's okay," like, and it is
Yeah.
okay. Like, it's a big deal. And for anyone thinking or saying that it isn't a big deal, like, you are clearly do not understand like the weight that it and how much it must mean to Joe to be the first Chinese driver in Formula One at the Chinese Grand Prix. That
Yep.
is a level of representation that I'm sure people who were in his position 20 years ago, that photo of him, like
Mhm.
that is a position that he's in. I'm sure that other kids are, you know, hopefully they get to do a 20 years later recreation of them at the Grand Prix and then them in Formula One. Like it is just, it's a big deal. So I
Yeah,
loved it.
I loved that photo that you're talking about, that where they had a photo of him in the stands at the Chinese
Hmm.
Grand Prix 20 years ago, because now, like you're saying, in 20 years from now, if there is another Chinese driver, it's the picture of that kid watching Zhou on the track crying
Right.
and then being on
Right.
the track themselves. Like, there's something so beautiful and, like, untouchable about that moment, and
Right.
I think it's a big deal. I think, like, I've always been very adamant that I think you have to be able to see yourself doing the
Hmm.
thing that you wanna do, and this is a moment where that's possible.
100%.
And we don't talk about it a lot, like, I see a lot of conversation about, like, Lewis Hamilton being the first Black driver, but there's really rarely a conversation about the fact that Zhou is the first Chinese driver, in the
Hmm.
sport, and I was glad to see it kind of being something that we're talking about, so,
Yes.
it's a big deal.
Also, a little piece of trivia that I saw on the F1 website that I literally just saw right before this. It says, and I pulled it up, it says, trivia, the circuit is designed to look like the Chinese symbol for Shang, meaning upwards,
Oh,
which I don't know if anyone has talked about that, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like a
that
small
is
little
cool.
piece of trivia. So
I didn't know that.
if you
I
didn't, now
love
you
that.
know. Now you know. They
Now I
put it on
know.
their
Thanks for the
little
fun
like
fact.
yes, they put it on their little like vital statistics page.
Mm, that's very cool. Thanks for picking that one up.
Anytime.
Well, speaking of the track and the design, one thing we did have this weekend was grass fires and gravel traps. That is just one of the things that we could not avoid for some reason. And I was surprised, or I guess not surprised, but like the first time that the grass caught fire this weekend, I was like, hello, like, what are we doing? How is it possible? But it turns out that the most likely situation is that the grass itself was actually dead and they spray painted it green for it to look good before the race. So when
Oh,
drivers were going off track, the, like, sparks from the engine were catching.
that makes so
Yeah,
much sense.
because I was like, "How is the grass? It's, like, so lush and green, there's no reason it should be catching fire." It's not.
Yeah, and it wasn't, like, crazy hot, it wasn't, like, wind, all of this, but that makes so much sense. Okay.
Yeah. So I do feel like, okay, that's what we were missing. It wasn't like an act of God saying, "Leave, get off the
Yes.
track."
No, when that happened, I was like, "Does this mean something? Are we in for a surprise?
I was worried because I was like, "If we have a crash, are we going to have, like."
Fire on the grass?"
Yeah, like, what is what does this mean?
Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, I think they managed it after the 2 large grass fires. One of them obviously caused a red flag, and it was a situation, but it was it. It was not bad. And then the last little big track situation, track conditions that we had were weather, basically, because that first free practice was wild because you've got Lance in the top time, and basically, like, nothing about free practice 1 was correct just because of the time with the weather and how many laps everyone was able to get in, and that was the only practice before sprint qualifying. So, I think we went in, I don't know about you, but I went in and I was like, "I have no idea. I have no idea what's gonna happen."
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch practice this week.
Yeah.
Sue me. Sue me. Um, but when I was looking back at everything, I was like, "This is weird. I'm just gonna wait for sprint qualifying," and boy, was that fun. So,
Yeah, it's our first sprint weekend of the season, and also, one thing, just because we were talking about Drive to Survive, something I realized watching this season of Drive to Survive is they do not cover sprint races at all. So if this is your first season watching Formula 1 after using Drive to Survive as your
good
kind of,
catch.
um yeah, so because I was surprised last season they didn't cover Oscar's win, and I was like, "Oh, are we just not talking about sprint race?" Which I guess they probably were like, no one likes them. It's very stressful. We don't have time
Yeah.
to cover them anyway. But basically, I did realize, like, a lot of the girls in the group chat that we have, of, like, grid chat listeners where we can watch the races together, which anyone can listen to and join if you'd like to. It's the links in the description. But a couple people were like, "What is a sprint race? What is going on?"
Mm,
Um, so this weekend, for anybody who's listening that didn't know what was going on, you've got basically 2 races, 1 weekend. Sprint race is about half the length of an actual race, but it's the same track, same conditions, and you also have a extra qualifying, which means you have 1 less practice. So you've got 1 practice, then you have qualifying, then you have the sprint, then you have race qualifying, then you have the race.
which is
Um,
new this year. The format is,
yeah,
in my opinion, better than it was last year. So it's the fact that we're getting all the sprint stuff out of the way. Like you're doing practice one, and then you go into sprint quali and sprint. And then you go
yeah.
into race quali and race. It just makes so much more sense because it used to be practice, race quali, sprint quali, and sprint. And then, oh, hey, here's the race, even though we
Right.
qualified. Like, dumb. It's so much better
All over the
now.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like it because I feel like it does make it a little bit more exciting too, because I
Hmm.
know last season, one of Max's, like, complaints about the whole thing is he was like, by the time you get to the sprint, you already know, you basically have the answer for what's happening next
That's very
versus,
true.
but, like, now we saw a completely different lineup for sprint qualifying versus, like,
Hmm.
GP qualifying. So it was interesting. I think it's so far been more successful in this direction.
Yeah, I do feel like because of how practice went and then also how qualifying went, I feel like for some teams they were still figuring things out in the sprint, which I don't know, could be bad, could maybe not be bad. And then by quali, I think things kind of got, which quali is race qualifying, and the race is obviously, the bulk of the points. I guess that's more important. But yeah, this weekend with the sprint was interesting. But I will take a sprint week. Look, listen, if people are saying no one likes sprints, I'm dead. Like
Yeah.
I am a sprint lover. I love sprint weekends. Like I think they're fun. I think they really shake things
Yeah.
up, and I think we really saw that this weekend.
I agree, and I think, like, I like this version of the sprint qualify like, of the sprint weekend, like, setup, because we did get, which I think is the point of trying to mix in these sprints, is that
Hmm.
we kind of right now have these, like, dominant periods, and it's not just Max. Like, we before Max and Red Bull, we had Lewis and Mercedes, and, like, before that, there was another dominant period. Like, there's always
Hmm.
been one dominant team or one really dominant driver, and so I think the goal with the sprints, which really worked this week, was to give you a little bit of, like, excitement and mix up,
Right.
where you do see kind of the grid getting shaken up, or you do see, like, much faster cars, because, like, sometimes the cars are built to, like, the Mercedes, for example, cannot maintain speed across the entire race. But when the race is half the length, it can be a little bit more competitive. You can have a little bit
Right.
more going on, and movement, and things have to be done quickly in a sprint. So I like it. If there's no sprint fans, both of us are dead.
That's right. That's right. And I think, wasn't this was where Zhou made it into SQ3. So that was
Yeah.
like a really awesome moment. That was definitely the highlight of his weekend. And I feel like there was so much, and also the weather. I
Mhm.
loved that, the rain came into play. And I know sometimes it's better if it's either just a dry qualifying session or it needs to be raining the whole time. But I think it kind of like
Mhm.
really shook things up. And I personally was thankful for the Lewis P2, which it should have been pole, but whatever. I'm gonna let it be. I'm gonna let it be.
That's actually a really good thing to talk about, though, which is why did Lando's lap time get restored? And I thought the argument was interesting because basically, if you were watching during
Hmm.
like qualifying, you watched Lando put in the fastest time, then his time was deleted, which gave Lewis the fastest time, and then right before sprint quali was over, they restored Lando's lap, which gave him like pole position for sprint qualifying. I mean, for sprint. And the reason why I realized, or I found out, was that the argument from McLaren was that the reason why your lap time is deleted, if you go outside of track limits, your time is basically deleted for that lap and the next lap,
Yep.
because you're getting an advantage from the lap ahead. And so the reason they ultimately restored it for that lap is they were like, there was no advantage with the way that this track works. Like, he hit the gravel, there's no advantage. He actually
Yep.
had to recover. And so that argument does make sense. Like, it wasn't actually, I think some people thought that it was the lap that he did exceed track limits on that he had deleted, but it was actually the next lap after that that he was within. So technically, like rules wise, it was fine. Emotionally, I wanted Lewis to have his little bit.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But it's fine. It's fine.
Agreed. And then also like the other thing that always is a little bit more exciting is Max qualified fourth. So I
Mhm.
do like to see him have to fight through the field. I don't know how
Of
you feel,
course.
but
Of course.
it's
I never wish badly upon Max. I mean, sometimes in the heat of the moment, I've been known to say some things, but like I just said, I am becoming more of a Max fan. So it's not like I wish badly on him. It just makes the racing so much more exciting when he's not starting from pole.
yeah.
Just as like honestly, it would have been better if he was starting a little further back because
Yeah.
then we would have had maybe it would have given since the sprint is so short, it would have given Lewis a little bit more time. Even though I don't know what that Mercedes car, he was doing what he could, but
Yeah.
it would have given Max a little bit more of a fight to have to work through the grid a little bit more. Yeah, I don't wish badly upon the man. I want some excitement. That's it.
I also have to be so honest with you. If I were Max, I would be bored. Like I would
He is
start
bored. Like we
I would
saw what he was doing after the race. Like he is bored.
I just feel like I would start qualifying lower just for fun. Like, I'm bored. Like, if you were at that level and you had that car, I truly would be like, you know what? Why don't we just see what it would be like to start from 15th this week? Like, let's see how far up we can go. You know what, Max? This is my note. Like, if you're listening, just try it. Just try it one time.
I don't think he's that bored, but he is bored. He's like, oh, I'm trying new things out, almost drifting, and like,
Yeah.
come on, this man. That's what I'm saying. He's so unserious. I'm
He is.
low key obsessed with him. Like,
I really want him to get to the point where I am very hopeful that next season we see, maybe not next season, but when the kind of new regulations come into play in
yes, in
2026
2026.
and we see like Ferrari build a better car, you have Lewis. I would love to see just like an actual competition again because the
Ugh.
season that Lewis actually lost when it was like it's the very big controversial
Mm-hmm.
eighth championship. It was so much more exciting to watch because they were and the season before that as well. They're much closer in fight. And so it's like I want to watch Max actually have a
Fight for it.
competitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort
Yeah.
of like it's like when you watch any of the greats, like when you watch like Michael Jordan, and if you look at it and he had been in a situation where there was like no one to compete with him at all, like he had to move through and find teammates that could support him and
Mm-hmm.
build an actual team to be able to be that dominant. And even then, you have moments where like games go to game seven, or I mean, playoff series go to game seven. Like
Right.
I want to watch someone prove how good they are because they have to compete against people
Right.
that are that close to being good as
Right.
at being as good as them. So
And like
definitely.
it's that's what makes sports sports. And I've
Yeah.
had girls in our group chat like genuinely ask some of us who've been watching for longer, like, was it all they're like, was it like this when Mercedes was winning? You know, I came in a little bit later. I'm still relatively a newer fan, I guess, but I watched in 2020, 2021, and you know, I went back and watched things in 2019 and I was like, honestly, no, it wasn't like this. Like it's literally not Red Bull's fault that they just got
Yeah.
it right. It's not their
Yeah, yeah.
fault. It's just it doesn't make it as exciting. And when Mercedes was dominant, it wasn't this dominant. It wasn't how it is now. You know, as we saw in 2021, there was still a fight, which the outcome of 2021 wasn't, you know, we don't have to get into that, but it was
Sure.
still like they were still close enough in points to where that happened that like then Lewis lost the championship. Like things were so much closer. There was still fight. And that's just, that's what makes sports so good to watch. And I miss that. Still love Formula One all the
Yeah.
same, but I miss that bit of like, you know?
Same. Yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement. I think it's like that is an argument. I actually made a video about this on I think it was on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, but I did my graduating film school thesis on the MCU. And so
Mm,
like why this works, like I've broken those movies down far too much for normal person consumption. But the argument that basically like every academic talks about when you're like building a movie like that, when you're building a superhero movie, obviously you know in the end that the superhero is going to win. There's not a movie that like you go in and sit down and you say, let me watch Spider-Man and I know he'll
right.
lose in the end, right? There's no question that good's going to triumph over evil, and that's sort of like the explanation and the expectation that you enter into when you go into the theater. But for every superhero movie to work, and really any action movie in general, there has to be a moment where you can be tricked into like questioning that. You have to like feel like, okay, maybe there's a moment where this actually good will not triumph over evil, like
Mhm.
the hero will not win. So like in Iron Man, for example, there is a moment in that final fight scene when Obadiah is holding him over the like glass window or the glass like roof situation, and he's trying to call Pepper and tell her to leave. And
Right.
there's a moment where you think like, oh, this is the end, like he's gonna lose, and you know in your core that there's not, but it feels like maybe it won't.
You think this
That's
will
what
be the
we're
time.
right, and, like, that is what makes those movies so addicting, that's what makes, like, narratives like that so addicting and action so addicting, and that feeling is also what makes sports addicting, and so, like, that is what we're missing from this dominant era, in my
Mhm.
opinion, and I really wish that we could get it back, and I am hopeful that we will, because, again, like you said, not anyone's fault. It's literally not Red Bull's fault that they managed to do their job. Like,
Right.
they're it's not Max's fault he's that good. It's not Red Bull's fault that they have the best car. It's not Adrian Newey's fault that he knows what he's doing. It just does take away that little magic of who's gonna win,
Mhm.
who's gonna come out on top. And even like before, when you had Lewis Hamilton, you were like, yeah, he's gonna win, but maybe not. Maybe there's a race where like
Right.
it's not gonna work. That's what we're
There were
missing, I
still
think, right
races
now.
when he wasn't qualifying on pole, which also this was Max's 100th pole. Shout out to Max. Woot woot.
Yep.
But it's like there were still plenty of races where Lewis had to really like fight to get, and then he would fight to get back up to, winning the Grand Prix. So it was things were different. And
Yeah.
I think there's some people who just love to say like, well, it was like this for Mercedes. It's like, no, it wasn't. It was a little bit different. But
Agreed. Yeah, and I think hopefully there is a space where that becomes a little bit more different.
mhm,
We'll see. But I don't think
yep,
it'll be before 2026, but
no.
we'll see. Well, speaking of Lewis, we also had the opening move, which Lando, try as he did his best, but he really did kind of overcorrect. And after that, I was like, oh, there's no way. There's no way that you're holding on.
I have a hot take.
Okay, hit
And
it.
I don't want I feel like the McLaren my wife is a McLaren fan, which is news to me. Just like 2 weeks ago, they came out and they were like, "I have to tell you something. I'm a McLaren fan." I was like, "Where did this come from?" Anyways, don't want McLaren fans to kill me, but I just always think Lando chokes. Like,
Ooh,
don't kill me. Like, he has had the opportunity to win multiple times now, and it's like I want the win for him. I want it for him.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I knew. I was like, it's not gonna happen. And it
yeah.
didn't happen.
My
I'm
thing
ready
for
for it to
Lando
happen.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know that it's chokes is the right word. I think what
Sure.
it is that Lando really lacks a level of, like, self-confidence that I feel like he needs to understand he's earned at this point, because if
Yes.
you listen to, like, any of his post-race interviews and he's like, "Well, like" even when he has a good day, it's always like, "Oh,
Yes.
yeah, could have done better. I really messed it up," or, "Oh, it was, operator error." And people are like, "No, it was literally the car." Like, we have all the data to say that it was the car
He's
or this thing or
fantastic.
that.
I
Yeah.
want him to really like go for it. Like lay
Yeah.
the hammer down.
Yep.
Like I don't want people to think I'm a Lando hater because I'm really not. I'm really not.
Yeah.
I think Lando and Oscar are the best driver pairing this year. As we've
Mm.
seen, like McLaren is really, they're working their way up. Like I think Lando is fantastic. I don't know what it is about this win. That I mean, right now, obviously, Red Bull. That's what it
Yeah.
is. But
Yeah.
even with as a Lewis Hamilton fan, I was like, Lando, like they're whatever. He messed it up is what he even and he was so nice about it in his post race interview and was like, yeah, like I guess nice. I don't know if nice is the word, but he was like, yeah, no, like I could have done more or whatever. Like I want more for Lando is maybe what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. I want more for
Yeah.
him. And I want him to start he probably wants this too, like to really just like start capitalizing on even if it's a sprint race, capitalize
Mhm.
on that pole position in that sprint race. Like, ugh, I just want better for him.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, I
Lando
feel you.
lovers.
No, I think you're not even like it's not Lando hate, it's just Lando,
No.
like it's almost like Lando desperation, like,
Yeah,
you've got everything
honestly.
in front of you, you know? Like, please.
Yeah. No, I don't
Um,
I never I when I first got into Formula 1, I never thought I would be like a big Lando fan. I think cuz he was so young when I started. I mean, obviously, he's still young, but cuz he
yeah.
was still so young and I was like, "Oh, he's just a baby." Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I was like, "Oh, whatever." Like at the time I didn't think that like I feel like sometimes I used to when I was a new fan, I thought of rookies as like, "Oh, whatever." But like even
Mm.
the greats start from something. So I don't know I don't know what my thinking was in that. But now I'm like I see the lure. I see the Lando lure. And I'm like,
Yeah.
he's a fantastic driver. And I can't wait for him to get that win. I think the world's going to explode.
Yeah.
Like, when he does
Agreed.
get that win, it's going to feel so good. So, so, so good. Hopefully it comes sooner rather than later. But
Do you think it'll be a sprint win rather than a GP win?
no, I think his timing is a little, not to get spiritual on the girlies, but I think his timing is a little too divine. It's going to
Mm,
be a race win. Like,
I see that.
I knew in my soul unfortunately, that he wasn't going to get this win for the sprint.
Mhm.
I did think he would podium, but
Yeah.
I think his, like I said, his timing is too divine. It will be a race win. Has to be. It has to be.
Okay. I love
That's
it. No,
that's my theory.
I think once he gets it, he will do a lot better in
Yes.
terms of, like,
Yes.
his performance overall. He just
Hmm.
needs one. And I'm almost like and not to wish ill on anyone, but I'm like, can we maybe just have one race where Max is like, "Lando, it's okay. Like, why don't you just go? I know you need it.
Yes.
Why don't you just go ahead?" He can fake it. He can literally just, like, have a little goofy drift and then
Ooh,
let
sorry.
Lando pass.
Kind
Oh,
of
oh,
lost
oh.
it. I hit the
Like, just fake it really
gravel.
well.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah.
You know, just a little one. You can take second, it's totally fine.
Yes.
Just a little pitch.
Maybe
You know, write him like an
Silverstone.
ooh, that would help, I think. I think that would
Hmm.
help.
Hmm.
You know what? I'm gonna write Max a nice little letter. "Dear Max,
Please help.
just please help.
Please help.
We're only looking for a 30 to 45-second delay from you,
Yeah.
if you don't mind."
Tell the pit crew to get the wrong tires and then they have to run back. You already have 25 seconds in between anyways. Like tell them to fumble it a little bit.
Just a little, just like don't even make it your own fault, you know what I mean? Then in post race, you can be like, "If I had had the proper tools and teammates, there's no way this would have happened, but Lando is such a
We
good driver."
are so delulu. It's hilarious.
I kind of like I have this vision of Max though with his like level of humor that I'm like at some point he is going to get that bored. Like at some point he is going to be like, "Why don't we just try doing the whole race on softs and just see what
I
happens?" You know?
I would love that. I would literally become the president of the Max Verstappen Stan Club if that were to ever happen.
Fingers crossed. Our plea. Oh man. And so I mean overall though, I will say like we said, loved the sprint. Had a lot of fun. Glad to see that like we got to have this moment where Zhou made it
Mhm.
into Q3. Also, I really think that when you look at where Valtteri and Zhou both qualified in the sprint, like the car is not as bad as it's being presented to be because of the pit stop tire issue. Like there is a performance in that car that could be pulled out once they get it figured out. But yeah, so I think it'll be interesting because I also think that like it's possible that if the car is being like continually upgraded in that way and by the end of the season like is it something that Carlos decides to go with and build that situation up, though I do think one, it feels so wild to me, but two, I feel that that means Joe loses his seat, and I don't want that. So we'll
I
see.
have takes on that. I know we're getting into season predictions later, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll
We
save
can
it.
dig in. We can dig in.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's get into the actual race because as we said, it was a very full weekend. So we'll try to make it a very full episode that hits the key points. We were basically, to me, right back to what we're used to with qualifying. Red Bull was on top, McLaren's were right behind with Alonso splitting them, and then we had the Ferraris right behind that.
Hmm.
Did you watch qualifying this time or did you just dive into the race?
So I didn't, and it was because I actually didn't even watch the sprint qualifying, and then I woke up and started jumping. I was in a hotel, and I started jumping in my hotel bed. I was like freaking out, and I was like, maybe if I don't watch, I'll
Yeah.
get the same thing will happen for the race qualifying for the no. I
You got
was
a
wrong.
little superstitious. Yeah.
I did, and I was wrong. It's fine.
That's
It's
that's
fine.
fair. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you have to be a little superstitious, and sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out, but it's
Well, and
okay.
then I was, like,
It's like
going down the order, and then I was like,
mhm.
P1 through 10, I don't see Lewis. Okay, let me maybe he's P11, and I was like, the duality of man, like,
Okay,
for him
that
to be
I saw this video clip of, like, Toto, like, it's like Toto was, like, looked upset, and, someone was like, "Wow, Toto looks so upset." I was like, "Yeah, like, look at him.
duh.
Look at" I mean, it's P2 in the actual sprint race to P18 in qualifying the next day. Like, the next time you took the car out, you're like, oops,
And
sorry."
even P2 isn't good for Toto. Like, that
Yeah.
sprint P2, Toto is like this, not like
It's
barely a smirk.
Yeah. The thing with Toto is that I talked about this last week, I think. I really just feel like in trying to have the best of every world, he has like ruined the world he had going for him.
Mhm,
And it's like we're seeing that like Kemi Antonelli had his first testing this past 2 weeks ago. And he has more set for the rest of the season. And it's like, okay, so you're putting all your hopes and dreams into this 17-year-old kid. And I think now he's looking at it and he's like, okay, I totally messed up the next 2 seasons for myself. Like,
mhm,
I feel like he looks at it and he's like, "Okay, I pinned all my hopes and dreams on this 17-year-old kid who couldn't even get his, super license until, like, literally a couple of weeks ago." And now because he was so worried about it and it's just like this buyer's remorse from losing Max from a couple of years ago or a while back when Max first came in,
mhm.
they had the chance to sign him, and it's like, I get it, but now you're in a situation where it's like, what are we even looking at for the rest of this year? So
Yeah,
every time I see him, I just look at him and I'm like, "You look so miserable."
he does.
But it's I think, you kinda made your own bed to some degree.
I was gonna say that, but I don't know, didn't wanna, but yeah,
You don't have another hot take.
yeah, I didn't wanna have hot take number 2 on here. I'm already still in deep waters for my Lando comment, but no, I do think that Toto did it to himself, and,
Yeah,
I mean, at this point, I'm just like, can the man celebrate, like, something? Like, he's gone on record being like, "We don't celebrate P2, we don't celebrate,"
yeah,
well, and it's like, okay, things have been shitty for a while. You can
yeah,
celebrate a P2 sprint, like, that is the best thing that Mercedes has had in a while. So
yeah,
let's give a little, like, let's do something. And
yeah.
it was like, yeah, P2 Lewis Hamilton. He was just like,
It's just the energy, but you're right, there was actually that clip was in Drive to Survive this past season where
yeah,
he
that's what
was
it
like
was. That's what it
he was
was.
like, "Should we celebrate? Should we take a picture?" And then he's like, "No, you're right. No picture for P2." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, this is giving like it's giving like those stage mom movies where you're like, we
Mm,
don't celebrate anything except a win." It's like, okay,
hmm.
well,
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
It's a little
Some
toxic to me. Like,
Sometimes I think morale is good, right? But I guess I
yeah,
I get it. You're trying to get back to being a championship team again, but also I'm like, I think part of it that's hard is that when you're just getting your teeth kicked in and no one's saying any sort of good job. And
hmm,
obviously, we only have like short bursts of it. We don't know if he's giving really
of
good pep
course.
talks
Of
otherwise and
course.
everything like that. But
But it's kind of
it
like,
does feel like, yeah,
as an outsider looking in, it's like it just feels like they're never celebrating anything.
yeah,
And how, if that's the only thing you have in your head is just like, oh, we have to win, we have to win. You know the car that you have, though. You honestly, realistically, I know Mercedes is not going to win anything this year unless like a miracle happens. Like, unless they
yeah,
really take their car, like what McLaren did last year, how that car was, she was kind of in the
yep,
gutter. And then they had the biggest comeback and worked really hard. Like, if Mercedes does something like that when it's time for upgrades, sure. But
yeah.
I don't see them winning. So, like, let's celebrate the little things.
Oh, actually, so in the Mercedes vein, which this is some stuff that came out after the race, which I want to bring up because it just came out today. There is a rumor going around right now that is being perpetuated by a actual journalist, so there may be real truth to this.
Mm,
That Kimi Antonelli will replace Logan Sargent in the Williams from Imola on. And I have to be honest with you,
interesting.
as we're talking about, yeah, and but like as we're talking about this total part of it, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, it's just part of Logan's problem is that he has been pushed into an F1 car far too fast. Like, Kimi jumped from Freka to F2. He's in ninth currently in F2. Like, he's had one test. What are we considering here? Like, why?
Um, I, like I've said, I don't hate any driver, but I don't see anything wrong with the Switch. I personally
Really?
I personally am just someone that's like I want Logan to do well, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Mm.
Um I mean I don't see anything wrong, but I also do think that they should just let Logan stay the entire season.
I
Um
would say for me, I'm like, if he was being switched with someone that is like a proven
sure,
situation, like obviously this couldn't happen, but for example, if for some reason they were able to get Liam Lawson over
sure.
from the Red Bull kid, sure, that's like a tested, proven driver who deserves their seat and is ready for prime time.
But
To take someone out.
Did Logan have the same kind of like when Logan was at where Kimmy is at right now, was he doing the same as Kimmy? You know what I mean? Was he doing as well as Kimmy is doing?
Jimmy's not doing that well. That's what's so shocking to me about it. He's in
Mm,
ninth in his first F2 seat, like championship to me. Like right now, he went straight from Freka to F2, so he jumped F3. He is in ninth. He's had only a couple of races in an F2 car. He's had one test in an F1 car,
mm-hmm.
and it just feels like to me, like you're also in a situation right now where the Williams car is like maybe the worst car to do this with. Like there it's one of the toughest cars to drive right now. They've had an extreme amount of damage. It's just bad news. And I also feel like we're pushing these drivers too high too fast. Like it's the same thing
Sure.
with Logan. You know what I mean?
I
I don't
mean,
know.
and I'm gonna be honest, this is very um like I haven't really read a lot about this. So I kind of heard about it and I was like, oh no. And then you said it and I was like, oh, okay. Um like I can see like knowing Formula One, I think what I meant is that knowing Formula One, I'm not surprised. And I literally am not surprised by if they did that. But I don't know. I'm not an expert, so who knows?
Yeah,
But I
no,
would
that's
not be
so fair.
surprised.
You know what? And the thing is, like, there's truly nothing is surprising anymore. And I think it's because, like, once once Lewis Hamilton announced that he was going to Ferrari, I was like,
Oh
oh,
my
there's a rip
gosh,
in the universe. There's just no way. Um, so nothing will shock me ever again.
very true.
Um, so to dive back into the race, to actually get to the Grand Prix, the thing that I thought was kind of a standout that we saw both in the race itself and then also the post-race conversation is that McLaren seems to be turning around much faster than they did last year.
Love it.
And you know what I mean? And like Lando at the end was basically like, I said at the beginning of the year, I thought we could fight Red Bull, and I think this weekend proves it. So I don't know. They were moving quick, and also Oscar obviously not having finished on the podium, but Oscar had a damaged diffuser, I believe. So
Hmm.
it was even still a good performance with the damaged
Well,
car.
and we know why the damaged diffuser.
Why don't we get into that? Why don't we get
Yeah.
into that?
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let me crack my knuckles.
Whew, whew, let me crack my neck.
Mm,
We've got what we in the business call a crash with no accountability.
a kerfuffle, if you will.
I love a kerfuffle, but I hated this kerfuffle.
As a used to be DR3 stan, I still love him, but
Mhm,
it's not the same. As a
yeah,
used to be DR3 stan, this did spark something in me, and I was like, "This is why I love Danny." Like,
yeah.
just I feel like the way he handled it, in his post race interviews, being like, "I've come down from it," and then when they were like, "Well, actually, Lance said like it was your fault," and he's like, "Oh, now I'm effing pissed." Like I was like, "Oh yeah, Danny, come on!" Like I was with him the whole time.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say also the other thing about this that was so frustrating for me was that Danny actually has been saying that he's supposed to get a new chassis and
Mm-hmm.
that he's been driving with one that's not correct. And whether that was like a mental block or an actual car issue, they did give him that new chassis this weekend and we
Mm-hmm.
saw him performing better. And then it went straight, like he just got totally boned.
Fully
And so
believe
it's
he would have
frustrating.
finished in the points. He would have finished in the
Agreed.
points. He was doing
Agreed, and
very
there's
well.
and it's like he needs to. Like, people have been talking I've been talking true. Like, it's not people, I'm people. Like, he has not been performing at the level he needs to be performing
Yeah.
at, and, like, this weekend was important, and he just gets I guess also for anybody who doesn't remember, we had a crash under a safety car where, Lance decided, "Why don't I just drive into the back of Danny's car? I think
Yeah.
it's fine."
I mean, Oscar said it well. Like
Mhm.
Oscar yeah, I don't know if it was a tweet or something, but you know how Lance said something about like, well, everyone was braking, and Oscar was like, yeah, except for you, like just like ran into the back of it, and all the memes that have come from this are just hilarious. But it's just, and it's the lack, like you said, the lack of accountability, and it just doesn't do well for Lance with all of the, oh, you're only here because of your dad's money or your dad owns the team. I just thought like initially, like, okay, maybe he just didn't, if he would look at the replay later, then, sometimes
Mhm.
we're like, okay, yeah, like that was my
That
bad.
was my bad.
No
Yeah.
accountability. It's just
Yeah.
the the entitlement. And Lance is not a bad driver. He's just, it's like he decides when he wants to actually be in the car and when to not. Like, because he's
I
like, oh,
do
whatever, I get a check. Like, I'm always going to be in
exactly.
Formula One.
I think he's the only person, literally the only person on the grid that has to worry or that doesn't have to worry about having a seat.
100%.
And
100%.
like the argument obviously could be made the same for Max, but like it's not in the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
No, if
Max,
Max
yeah,
tomorrow started losing every race, oh, we would be like, what's going on with Max? Maybe he
yeah.
shouldn't be at Red Bull. Something's changed.
And I think like with Lance, the thing that's frustrating really with him is he is a good driver. He has a good track record. He
Hmm.
would he be in Formula 1 without his dad? Probably not, but like you could say that about almost every driver on the grid though, with whatever connection that they have. Like there is, as we know, like a pay for play level of
Of
this sport.
course.
So,
But he's been in it for a long time.
yeah, without the performance. And
Yeah.
it's just frustrating because it's like, okay, come on, buddy. Like you're looking at what Fernando's doing with this car. You're looking at a situation where it's like a driver of the caliber of Carlos Sainz is without a seat, and that seat could be a good seat for him potentially.
That's what I'm saying. Like, think about the kind of team that Aston Martin could be if Lance was not, if someone else was in Lance's seat with
Mhm.
Fernando Alonso. Hello? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Or honestly, even if Lance was willing to adjust some of his like personality responses to certain things. Because
Sure.
like if he could get to the point where he's listening to Fernando, doing what Fernando says, like allowing that kind of accountability, there is something that he brings to the team. But like his complete also if you watch the onboard, like
Hmm.
he's not looking at the car in front of
That's
him.
what I mean. Like, he decides when he wants to be there and when he doesn't. Like, when I say be there, I mean like dialed in. Yeah. Like, he decides when he wants to be checked in and when he doesn't want to be. It's like, I, genuinely, it upsets me because I don't want to not like a driver. Like, and I'm just like, come on. Like, I want him to prove everyone wrong. Like, yeah, he's there because his dad owns the team, but he's a really good driver and performs every week. And we've seen good things from Lance Stroll. Like, we've seen them, and it's so inconsistent, and it drives me insane. Drives me insane.
I feel the same, and, like, it's kind of the way you were talking about Lando earlier, where it's like, it's not hate, it's just desperation. Like, I feel the same way about Lance. I feel like I defend him all the time, and then I'm like, "Come on, buddy, like, you can't let me defend you and then make you
Yep.
feel like don't make me look like a jerk." Like,
No,
come
I was
on.
literally defending him to my wife just yesterday. We almost got into a fight because people are always like, no, Lance is not good. And I'm like, no, he is good. That's the thing. He
Right.
is good. He is good. He's just not, he just is entitled and decides when to be there and when to not. Like, he is a good driver. We've seen it. We've seen it.
Just come on, come on. Like that's all I can say. I don't even have like a coherent thought. I'm just like, please get it together.
I wanted to pull up like Danny, his quote.
Oh, when he was in the garage.
Yeah. Oh, and then also, wait, actually, going off of that,
Mhm.
the fact that from that race, the fact that Danny has a 3 grid penalty for Miami.
It is
And
his
at
fault though.
yes, but I also think it was like also just Danny, like I need the man to catch a break. I've said that we're only 5 races in, almost 6, and I've been like, I need Danny and Williams to just catch a break. Like,
Mhm.
it's the fact that I feel like they didn't really understand the rules, which seems a little silly to say for like Formula One drivers, but I for people that are kind of wondering what we're talking about, this is kind of what the stewards consulted. So this is what happened when Danny got hit, like, it was Danny and Lance, and then Nico kind of jolted
Mhm.
past. And then when that second safety car came in, Danny was like, well, Nico like took my spot on the safety car under the safety car, so I'm going to take my spot back. And apparently that's wrong. And so
Mhm.
basically what the stewards were saying is that the driver of car 3, Ricardo, admitted that he overtook car 27, Hulkenberg, deliberately, but he explained that he felt that he could do so because car 27 had overtaken him under the safety car before on lap 28. There's no justifiable basis for car 3 to overtake car 27 while the race was under safety car conditions. So, and then of course it would have been the 10-second time penalty, but because of the
Yeah,
DNF,
he's got a
like
grid
it's just
penalty.
like I felt for him. I really like felt for him after this race. Second DNF in a row, and I'm just like,
It's hard.
uh,
It's hard because it's like you want to see him, like, have this comeback arc, and sometimes I look at it and I'm like, "Is it do I actually want him to have the comeback arc, or do I want, like, the poetry of the comeback arc?" Because it's like, he left Red Bull for feeling like he was second best, he went to Renault, he really, like, was possibly gonna do something at Renault and then decided that they didn't have it, so he jumped ship to McLaren. He totally ate it at McLaren and ends up with no seat. Then Red Bull feels basically sorry for him and, like, they're like, "What if we give you this, like, paid cheerleader position?" And then he ends up being able to take over that AlphaTauri seat at the time, and then he breaks his wrist, and then Liam Lawson comes in, and then they still give him his seat back, and it's like, okay, yes, like, we all want I don't know, it's like you want that, like, perfect picture perfect, but then it's like, can he earn it? Can he earn it back? That's the problem.
yeah. Is it time to throw it all? Like, is it time to just give it up, or is it like, is it really going to come for him? Like, I really am a DR3 stan. I kind of keep quiet about it these days, but like, I have a hat. I have a Daniel Ricciardo hat that says like I never left. I love it. Like I wear it often. And I would love for his comeback to like really be a true comeback.
I will say we both were like, "We gotta talk about the drama," and we've skipped the race so far. So, we have Lewis with one of, like, the best movements. We knew how bad he was starting out, like, starting in 18th in qualifying, and he finished ninth, so that's, like, a very impressive move. And then
Yes.
we also I wanna talk about the opening because we talk about Fernando Alonso a lot, and we talk about, like, this fact that he's now signed what he's calling a lifetime contract with, Aston Martin, and a lot of people I've seen kind of have the discourse of is Fernando keeping a seat from a younger driver and, like, refusing to retire, right? But I feel like when you see things like the opening of this race and you see him overtake to get to that P2 position and
I
have
thought
these,
he
like,
had Max for a
strong
second. I really
Yeah,
thought
I
he was
really
gonna get
did.
Max. Yeah.
I did, and also I think the commentators thought he almost had Max for a second
Yeah.
too. And I'm like, I just feel like if you still have gas left in the tank to be doing something like that, keep driving.
I have never once thought, "Oh, Alonso should retire." Like he's taking
Mhm.
no. He's found the team. He's really, as we can see, has really gotten so much performance out of that car. Like he's killing it. I want more for him in Aston Martin. He's kill. Like I can't wait to see Alonso win in an Aston Martin. Hopefully,
Agreed. I also think he's got he just the check they must have written him to keep him there. I am happy for him. That's all
he's
I have to
happy.
say about that.
He's
Yeah,
happy.
he's thrilled.
Love that for him. He made a great decision moving to Aston Martin.
He did.
1000%. And he knows it. He knows it.
He does, yeah, and I think
Yes.
also I do wonder, seeing the success that that move had for him, I do wonder if that influenced Lewis's decision to eventually move to Ferrari, to be able to see that, like, a move that late in your career can be a successful one, can be, like, a second wind. So I
Yeah.
think it
I
was good.
mean, I'm honestly not surprised by Lewis's move, and I can't wait for next year.
Same. And then also just speaking to Fernando's skill, there is a moment in the race where I thought he was about to crash because he hits the gravel trap. And
Yep.
I was like, oh no. But then if you watch, you can literally see, like, his intense response time and, like, how strong he is to catch that. Boy, oh boy, do I love to watch a drive like that.
He is a fan. I mean, everyone knows it. He's a fantastic driver, and I don't know for people saying I haven't seen many people, but for anyone saying that he's taking the seat of a young driver, or he should be retiring. Like watch his onboards. He's so good. He's so good. And he's in it. Like, he's still in it. He's not just there for hobby.
No, yeah, exactly. He's not just there to be there. And I think also there's
Yeah.
something like so nice about being able to watch some of the drivers that were around for the old school cars because the skill level is just so it's not that it's like,
Mhm.
oh, they're so much more skilled, but it's just such a different level of skill where they like are used to having to rely on the car before we had the same level of data that we can get from it. It's lovely to watch. I really love to see it.
Yes. I love when the drivers, younger drivers, are always like, "Yeah, I used to look up to Fernando Alonso." And I'm like, I think it's so
Little
cute.
baby. I
Like, who is
know.
it? Carlos has a picture with him, and I'm like, like, wouldn't it be so cute if Lance wasn't there and Carlos got to go to Aston Martin with Fern? I would, I'd cry.
I was talking about this with a friend the other day, and I was just like, "Oh." It was the first time I was like, "Lance, like, I think maybe it's just time for you
It's
to go do
time,
something else." I
please.
and the thing is, like, again, I think he's a good driver. I don't mind that he's in the sport. I think this was
We
a
said it.
very bad week
Mm.
for him.
It's
And yeah.
it's the multiple bad weeks. Like, I just want him to be there all the time.
Yeah.
I want him to put the haters, me, to rest. Like, I want him to prove me wrong. Like,
Stop.
please,
I want him to put the haters me. It's me,
me.
I'm haters.
Like, prove me wrong, Lance. Please. Please. I want to
Oh,
root for you. I do.
yeah,
Like,
but it's
it'd be
not
great.
happening. Doing my
Ugh,
best, but
tale as
no.
old as time.
Good lord. And then on the flip side, we also have I noted this as V-Carb's very terrible no good week because not only do we have Danny's crash that was not his fault, we also had Yuki retire from contact with Magnussen. And I honestly just wanted to like one of them is so tall and one of them is so small, and I just wanted to scoop them both up and be like, it's okay.
Yuki was
It's
just
gonna be all
not
right.
having it this weekend, I feel like.
No,
It was like
he really wasn't.
Yuki knew he was out. He goes, "Yeah, I'm done." He's like, "It's over. It's just let's
Yeah.
just this weekend has
Just
been enough as it is. It's over." My,
some
how the tables have turned from Yuki throwing out F bombs from a DNF, and
yes.
now he's like, "We're out, guys.
He's like,
Sorry."
just let me. I feel like he has this energy of someone being like, I just, you know what? Let me go home. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
let me.
yes. Yes. He's like, "You know what? This weekend was hard enough. I already knew I wasn't gonna get points. Let's just can I go eat?" Like,
Yeah.
he's over it.
Can I take a nap? He's like, do we really have to
Exactly.
do press or can we simply get on the plane? I want to go home. Like,
He's ready. He's ready to go. No,
um,
that was the exact energy I got when he was tumbling away. He's like, "Yep, I'm done." Like, he's just like, "I can't do it anymore. I'm
it's like
tired. I'm tired."
it's like every once in a while I'm waiting for one of them to be like, can you see if my mom can come pick me up? Like, I want to
No,
go
literally.
home.
"Mom, come pick me up.
I
I
quit.
DNF'd."
And then just like standing. Oh boy. I think also the last thing we haven't talked about from the race is again, sometimes I try to make myself laugh in my notes that I would take down from the race, which is why this segment is called The Girls Are Fighting at Ferrari. The Charles radio just he essentially was like, why what are we doing? What are we doing? And I think I also saw a meme that was literally just a picture of Carlos and it said, what are you gonna do? Fire me? Like it's, it's
Well,
true.
and like when the sprint race was happening, when all that mess was going on with Fernando, Carlos, Charles, Checo, I am a self-proclaimed Carlos lover.
Hmm.
It's not that I love Charles as well, but if someone were to ask me if you could only keep one, I would pick Carlos.
Ooh.
But when that happened, I was like, oh, Carlos is in the wrong. Like we all knew. We all
Yeah.
knew. But I don't know. That's like kind of why I love him. Ugh. Like he just does things. I love when a driver is just so aggressive and it's like they leave it all out there. And at least I know what he did was wrong. It's not like oh, did he? No. What he did was wrong. And if that happened to anyone else, penalty. But because it was his teammate, like obviously they're not gonna have a penalty. But no, he's Carlos is putting it all out there. He's like, I still don't have a job for next year and I want the best possible offer ever. So he's putting it all out there, which I can admire and I respect. But at some point I'm like, okay, Carlos, like even me, I'm like, let's back off, baby boy. Let's not hurt Charles. Let's not like jeopardize the team.
But no, I agree. I think it's like it's rough. I really like Carlos. Like I'm all for a driver in their revenge era. Like I want to see it. And I think he's obviously putting it all out there, but it was a rough weekend. And it's also sometimes with the two of them, I like struggle watching them actually fight on track because they really have this
Mhm.
like good dynamic off track, and it's so rare in a teammate pairing, and sometimes they really do perform really well as teammates, and then we have these weird weeks where they don't. But other than that, it was fine.
Yeah, I think that as a Ferrari lover, like I've talked about this with other Ferrari fans, and I feel like some people like don't understand that they really aren't good together on track.
Mhm.
Like some we've had good moments with them, but they're when it comes down to it, they will tussle. But
Yeah.
they have great chemistry off track, and we all know like they're not friends, but like
No.
by any means, a lot of the drivers aren't friends. They've all said that.
Yeah.
And the ones that are friends, but they have great chemistry on track. Like we've seen the Ferrari socials, like we know they have great chemistry, but it's like on track they really kind of. And I
Yeah.
think that is really hard for some Ferrari fans to come to terms with. That like they are not sometimes, a lot of the times, they're not really good teammates on track.
Yeah.
And it's not like Ferrari gave them orders to fight, and it's not like Ferrari gave them orders to not fight. So that's what you're gonna get. Like they're not. I don't know. I think next year, Lewis and Charles, I'm very eager to see how that pans out. And then obviously, of course, as a Carlos Sainz lover, I'm eager to see where he ends up next year too. But
Same. I agree. I think it's going to be I'm very excited for that teammate pairing because I think it's two people who very much understand a long-term goal, and
I agree.
there's not a need for that competition in the same way. So,
Of course, yeah, because Lewis has proven himself time and time again. And,
mhm.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Well, I want to dig into next season predictions because we've like found ourselves going there like 14 times throughout the episode. So I will wrap us up and remind everyone that the podium was Max, Lando, and Checo, which if you go by Max Verstappen deletion rules, it's basically Lando's first Grand Prix win. And then
Yes.
he just won. It's fine. So yeah, we've got to congratulate Lando on basically his first Grand Prix win. And then
Yes.
I also am excited because if we look at it, I think earlier in the season, there was this feeling that maybe it was going to be a super dominant Red Bull for first, a super dominant Ferrari for second, and then a fight for third. But McLaren, as we're looking at these constructor standings and how they performed this weekend, like I think we're looking at instead of a Ferrari Mercedes battle, I think we're looking at a Ferrari McLaren battle, which is going to be really interesting. And McLaren will also be upgrading they'll be introducing a new upgrade package at Miami, and both drivers are getting it, which I think means that they're pretty sure it's going to be a solid upgrade.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be exciting.
Like I'm
Yeah.
a huge Mercedes fan because Lewis is there, but I don't know. That's so exciting for McLaren. I'm very excited now. That's really cool.
It's sort of one of those things where it's like I'm kind of like this season I feel like Mercedes is sort of down and out anyway, and
I
next
know.
season Lewis is at Ferrari, so it's like why bother?
Yes. Yes. No, I have fully like dove into my Ferrari Tifosi era already. I'm ready.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
I did want to highlight before we move on to predictions. Please, everyone out there, tell me that you have watched the Max Verstappen podcast, the cool down room, when they're watching Lance fully dive into Danny. Another reason why I love Max. Have you seen that video where he just can't stop laughing? He
Yeah.
starts laughing, and I'm like, I love him. He is
Yeah.
just like us. I also would have laughed, and then as soon as he notices that like Lando and Checo aren't laughing, he's like, oh,
He's like, "Oh, my
he's like,
bad.
oh, is
My
that
bad."
not funny?
I
Sorry. He's
thought it
like,
was
I'm
kind
just
of
a
funny.
silly, goofy boy. Literally. He's like, I thought that was kind of fun. Because it is funny when it's not you. Like, it's funny the fact that he's like, why did that happen on the safety car? Like, Max is like, please. And I
It's also
just,
funny because he's, like, not in the same race. Like, he's like it's like coming home and finding out that, like, "Oh, like, an hour after I left the house, like, the kids drew on the
yes.
walls." Like, he's like, "That's funny. It wasn't my problem. I was at work."
Right. He sees everything and he's like, that happened behind me? Crazy. Like, I love this energy. This is great. They're like, we don't care about formalities. We're just sitting here chit chatting.
Yep,
Obsessed. I
agreed.
will always be obsessed with those cool down rooms.
Also, Max was so happy for Lando per social media. Like, if you looked at the posts
Yes.
afterwards, because he so rarely posts something from
Yes.
the cool down room. I was like, "Oh, how cute."
And their collab posts, like when they were on their PJ, their private jet. I was like, they're just and those two are friends. Like they are besties. Lando was at P's birthday party. Like so cute.
Yeah.
I love them. They're cute little friends.
I do really love it. I think they're so cute, and I think it's, like it's always nice to see a little bit of that camaraderie, and again, like, Max
Mhm.
was in a different race anyway, so it's sort of like he's posting about his friend winning a race. Well, to wrap everything up, we always do, like, next race and rest of season predictions, so do you have anything for Miami that you think is coming or anything that you feel is happening for this season?
For Miami, I genuinely think Max is gonna win.
Oh,
I'll
shocker,
be at
shocker.
Miami. I
Oh,
know.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for that, and I don't have any crazy season predictions. I would like to see a fight for the second spot in the constructors.
Mhm.
I would like to see that with as much as I am a Ferrari girl, it would just add excitement because we already know that like Red Bull's gonna run away with it. So for the sport, for the sake of the sport, I would love to see the fight and the constructors in that P2 area.
Same. I'm gonna say I think we're gonna see an impressive return for McLaren in Miami. I think Red Bull will continue to be Red Bull. There's nothing
Yeah,
shocking about that. Um, and I think we're going to see like that Ferrari McLaren gap become very competitive and exciting.
I
Um,
agree.
and my season prediction, I don't think it's going to be a GP win, but I would like to see Lando on a podium in first place in some capacity. Don't know if we're going to see it, but I think we'll see some seconds. I could see
I
that for him.
really I would love for him to get first. Like I would love for another Australia situation to happen and instead of it being Carlos, it's Lando. Like that would just I feel like that would put that feeling of what we've been talking about, what we want to feel within the sport again. I feel like that would like reignite that. I feel like the fans would just we go crazy. Like it would just be awesome. I would love that feeling. So I'm holding out hope. I'm holding out hope. I also think from the lower, like in the lower pack, I am still really impressed and I'm happy for Haas. Like they've consistently, like even if it's just 1 point, they've been pulling out a point, 2 points, double points with both drivers. So I think that they're not going to finish last, which is great for them. And lucky for them, Alpine is not in a good situation this year. So I think that Haas is going to make a little bit of a comeback, which is good for them. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much what I have for
I agree. Those are
this
good
season.
predictions. I will say my only other Miami prediction is that Gunther Steiner is going to be a menace, and I can't wait to watch it as an official
I can't
ambassador of
wait.
Miami.
I love that.
Cannot wait.
I
It's
love
gonna be
his
so,
Instagram
so
account.
fun.
It's so good.
Oh, so, so good.
So
Well,
good.
Tasia, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I had the best time. Um, if people want to find you on the internet, what are your handles? Where can they find you?
You can find me at F1Fem on both Instagram and TikTok.
Amazing. So if you are not following Tasia, she does a really great amount of like content that I think is really inclusive, which can sometimes be hard to find in this space and is really like Tasia's mission statement, I think. Tell me if I am speaking for you incorrectly, but
No, no, no. You are 100% correct.
so I think if you are looking for like a very welcoming, fun type of content creator who's going to make you feel welcome in the space, which sometimes can be difficult to find, you are going to find that with Tasia. So I can't tell you you would be in better hands.
That was very kind. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you again for hanging out. I had a great time. As always, if you don't want to watch these races alone, you can join the actual grid chat. I host a group chat of motorsports fans where fan behavior is encouraged, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. We watch these races live together, chat about breaking news, and of course, send each other an unhealthy amount of memes. If you'd like to join the grid chat, you can do so at tandemproductions.com/gridchat. There will also be a link to that in the episode description. Once you fill out the form on the webpage there, you'll get an invite via email from me. If you want to connect, let me know what you thought about the episode, or even just ask me another question that you'd like me to cover on the show. You can find me on all social media platforms at Marissa Kamari. And one of the best ways to connect with me is if you're listening to this podcast on Herd FM. You can find me in the community section on Herd FM, where my username is just my first name, Marissa. And once we follow each other, after every episode that you listen to, I'll be able to comment and have a conversation with you directly. So again, my username on Herd FM is Marissa. As always, I've been your host, Marissa Tandon, and thank you for joining the Grid Chat.